Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 150 of DevChatter. I think you guys have probably noticed from the start of this stream that we are starting another guest stream. So welcome. If this is your first time here, you are able to ask questions in chat. We will try to answer them as we can. Feel free to code along with us or take a look at the code here on the stream. You can actually find all of the code that we do here on DevChatter is actually out on GitHub and available for everyone. Would help if I got the bot going so it will do those links. And I want to make sure I give a quick intro to our guest today. So up in the corner, you can see Jon Skeet up there. So hi, John. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you and we can get started.
So my name's Jon Skeet. I'm a staff software engineer at Google, working on the Google Cloud Platform .NET client libraries, which is a very long-winded way of saying if you talk to Google Cloud Services via .NET, chances are you use client libraries that I'm associated with, responsible for. I've been in the C# space since kind of 1.0. Most people probably know me from Stack Overflow. I have a book as well, C# in Depth. And I love everything C# and time zones, which is kind of important for today's chat, I believe.
Yep, that is correct. And I will tell you that I believe your book is actually down in our recommended reading section below the stream.
Right.
Yeah, so I used to run a lot of internship programs and things like that, and I would often recommend that people read your books. Although this is the third version, I think you're working on 4th edition or some new edition.
Fourth should be out in, I reckon, 2 months' time. It will actually be physically available. That's the intention. So, shipping sometime in January. So by this time in February, I'm almost confident. The bulk of my work is done.
That's good. That is one of those things that is really amazing when people are able to actually, like, new versions of books are crazy amounts of work.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I don't think people realize just how much is in those.
No, I mean, so this is the 4th edition, which makes it sound like, oh, I've just added a bit. But actually, it's a complete rewrite.
Oh, wow.
I think I copied a few paragraphs from the 3rd edition, but basically, the C# 1 to 4 material was just squished down. The C# 5 material was actually expanded, given that I've used async a lot more since I wrote it originally in however long ago it was. And then there's C# 6 and C# 7, and a little bit about C# 8. But obviously that's all sort of, well, this might happen, who knows? I'm just glad that I've managed to get the book out before C# 8 comes out, because otherwise that would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, always a challenge. Okay, so I am going to do a quick explanation of what we're working on. You kind of alluded to it by mentioning that we want to deal with time zones a little bit. So we're starting a new website here. So this is pretty much a blank slate website. The goal of it is to be like a scheduling kind of site where various streamers are able to basically put in where their schedule is. So a lot of new people have started doing these live coding streams, and I've talked with a lot of them. I've helped a lot of them get started, like Ed, for example, who was our guest on the stream yesterday. I talked with him a long time ago when he was planning on starting a stream, gave him all kinds of advice and other things like that. And then when he went to look to schedule, he was like, okay, where can I line up? And the feedback he actually gave me yesterday was, if he's live at the same time as either me, C# Fritz, Visual Studio, or like any of the other, fairly common popular sites, streams, he's like, I don't get much traffic because I have to compete with them. And so he's like, I need to find one that's like in a bet, like I need to be able to find a good spot for it. And I think a lot of people do that same kind of thing. Now, if it doesn't line up, sure, yeah, overlap with someone else. And it's, it's not a big deal, but at least then you can make a conscious decision of, hey, that's when I want to put it. I think John is in the chat. I think you can read the chat.
Oh, yeah, although I need to sign in and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's basically the kind of thing that we want to build. Now, here's why we actually want, John to help us with the time zone complexity. So let's say that I am a streamer we'll give John as an example. Let's say I'm a streamer and my normal time in at the moment is Greenwich Mean Time, right? So
Ish. Yep. We'll talk about what GMT means over time. Yep.
sure, yeah, and but in the summer, that's not the one that he's on. He's on. I assume you're in British summertime.
Yes.
BST in the summer.
Yes.
And here where I am in Eastern Standard Time right now in the US, and I switch to Eastern Daylight Time in the US when it's summertime. And so the weird part is that if I enter in a time, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, always, always, always store your times in UTC, which is one of those like, okay, like that's a simple solution to a problem. But if it's in the future and it's recurring, if I say every Monday at 2 p.m. I'm going to do a stream, okay, if I recorded that in UTC, it's going to stay at 2 p.m. and then when my time zone shifts, it starts happening at a different time?
So that's one problem with it. And there's another problem. That's a general problem with recurrent events, that your local 3 p.m. won't always be the same UTC time. There's a different problem in terms of time zone rules changing over time, which I think we should probably wait a bit, but I will cover later on. And if I haven't done it by later on, you'll need to poke me about it.
Yep, sounds good. So that, generally speaking, is where the main challenge comes in. So and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually the approach I like is specifying, instead of what time zone I want my event to happen in, specifying, say, the location where my event takes place, and then I can choose the time zone that it currently is for that place.
So firstly, we need to that's potentially a good thing for interesting, further complicated reasons. But I think it would be worth us talking about the term time zone to start with. So you were originally referring to GMT and BST as if those are time zones, and those are not time zones. There's no good term for them that I'm aware of, but they're sort of half time zones. They are offsets and names that are observed by a time zone for some of the time. So I tend to use the IANA time zone IDs, by which I would be in Europe/London. So that's my time zone, and that time zone alternates between GMT and BST. And back in 1969, it was in BST, which didn't mean British Summertime, it meant British Standard Time and was UTC +2. Sorry, no, that was UTC +1. There was BDST, British Double Saving Time or Summertime, back in either in the war or maybe in the First World War. But all of these are within the same time zone. So one time zone varies its UTC offset over time. Now, so where you said storing a location, I could simplify things and say, well, just store a time zone ID. And most of the time that would be absolutely fine. The reason it would be useful potentially to store an actual location, as in a geographical location, is suppose a particular location, so a time zone represents like a region of Earth that has the same local time for the whole of time. And sometimes new time zones need to be created. Suppose, I don't know whether there is a Europe Cardiff or Europe Swansea time zone, for example, so for Wales. But suppose Wales became independent of the United Kingdom and decided to change their time zone to a new time zone. Then if we had stored Europe London as the time zone that was, closest to what we were doing, but we were actually in Wales, then in the future we would need to change our time zone ID. Whereas if we stored the location and looked up what is the time zone for that location all the time, whenever we wanted to actually get things, then we wouldn't have a problem. That is very complicated, and that's probably one level of indirection further than we really need.
I have a feeling if we run into a situation where someone's literally had their country change time zones, I think we can probably get them to uh, edit the data.
Right. And this is why I think I'm right in saying, and I'm going to just check on uh, a little site I've got that has all the offsets and all the time zones for everything. If I look for Indiana, oh no, there's only one for Indiana, but there are certainly bits of the US where there are lots and lots of different time zones within the same state because that state was broken up, and I thought Indiana was it. But
It was
that
for a
may be
while,
historical.
but I think they rejoined the eastern part of the U.S. for the most part. Because
But
you
but
are
that
right.
for a while is the interesting bit because the idea is that a time zone ID is historical as well, at least to some extent. I mean, IANA don't particularly guarantee anything before 1970, but if you've got two different places that now observe the same time forever, but in 1980 they had different local times. Those should be different time zone IDs because the idea is if you've got a time zone, you should be able to say for any instant in time ever, what did the clocks on the wall show at that time?
Ah, yes, that's a good point. Yep.
So, and that's where it gets a bit weird that, how much do you care about history for streaming? You probably don't care about anything back in the 1970s.
Yeah, we
Um,
probably only care
for
about what's going on like now or last week or, in the future.
Right. For other things, history matters a lot. Um, and just to give one of the things I love about date time as a whole area is that it has so many corner cases that are really funny. So let me give you a weird example that recently broke Noda Time and all of Java and all kinds of things. There was an update to time zone data that affected how Japan observed daylight saving time in 1948 to 1951. Um, so most countries go forward or back sort of sometime in the early morning. So in the UK, we jump forward from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock and back from 2 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Um, in Japan, we previously had rules that say it went back from 1 o'clock to midnight, but those rules have now been changed to say no, it goes back from 25 o'clock to midnight of the next day. So it was instead of there's a 24 hours of Saturday, then 1 hour of Sunday, midnight to 1 o'clock, then another 24 hours of Sunday. Instead of that, Saturday was 25 hours long, with the last hour being 24:01, 24:02 up to 24:59, and then it would go to Sunday at midnight. Um, and that's now represented accurately in the data. Unfortunately, I don't know of any date and time APIs in the world that accurately support that, but it could make a legal difference. Because if you had a law that said, if you're 80 years old, you get a pension, then if you were born on a Saturday, on that Saturday, it be a different date of birth from if you're born on the Sunday. So if you're born at 24:30 on the Saturday, you might get a pension and you wouldn't get it if you were officially born on the Sunday. So as I say, this is really weird corner cases, but it's fun stuff.
Yeah, and it is amazing. And see, the funny thing about this is the kind of stuff that only software developers actually have any concept of. I swear. Like, I don't. Most of the world would never even have to think about this, let alone actually ever know the answer to any of these things that you're talking about.
Right. And unfortunately, it's politicians who affect this most, and they don't really know what's going on in terms of the software. I suspect most of them anyway. So, for example, Ireland has sort of daylight saving time, but whereas everyone else has standard time in the winter, and then it moves forward, so their daylight saving offset is +1,
Mm-hmm.
mostly +1. Ireland is different. Ireland has their standard time is summer, and they have a daylight saving offset of -1 hour in the winter.
Oh, weird.
Very, very weird, and probably doesn't affect very much software because if you convert an instance to a local date and time, it's going to give the same result anyway. But yeah, just so many things. And if the politicians understood, hey, this is going to cause problems, maybe they wouldn't do it, and maybe they would give more than a day's notice, like Morocco did earlier this autumn. But there we go. We should probably do some code.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be your recommendation then? Because I sort of suggested locations, but would you suggest time zone instead?
I would probably go with to store a time zone ID.
Okay, so store a time zone ID. Okay.
Which is just a string. And I would use the IANA time zone ID. So Windows has its own joyfully different to everyone else and also joyfully misleading time zone IDs. So I think in Windows I'm in British Standard Time and would be in British Standard Time even if I were in British Summertime, because the standard part is only part of the ID. It doesn't actually mean that it's only observes standard time. So that's really confusing. So I would, first recommendation, if you possibly can, use the IANA time zone IDs. It means that you'll be able to interoperate with every other system in the world. And the downside is it's harder to use from .NET if you're not using something like Noda Time. There are other libraries available that will do conversions between Windows names and IANA names.
Okay.
But
so I was planning on using Noda Time because I already use it in our other project. So
excellent. Glad to hear it. Right.
I've run into problems with time zones before, so I was like,
yeah.
A long time ago, I was like, okay, what library handles time zones better? Ah, Noda Time. That looks good.
Right. And I think there are concrete places that I could give you examples where the .NET time zone info really doesn't give you enough information or let you make decisions. But what the main benefit of Noda Time isn't so much what it does for you and what it it's useful to provide the IANA time zones. That's one of the major benefits. But to my mind, the thing is it makes you think. Date time you can use without thinking, and when it comes to anything to do with dates and times, you really, really ought to be thinking. So the philosophy of Noda Time is make developers think for any decision that they should be taking, they should be knowingly taking that decision, and then we should make it as easy as humanly possible for that decision to be expressed in code. And then those decisions can be read in the code, and you can also easily, as well as making the decisions, you can represent your data in a way that makes it really clear. So a date time could be system local time or unspecified time zone or UTC, and they're all represented in a single type. In Noda Time, we have many, many different types, which means you've got to choose between them. And again, that's decisions, but then your code, it stops you from doing things that don't make sense, and makes it really clear what you're trying to represent at any time.
Makes sense. Okay, so what would you recommend then for this? So we have Noda Time should be installed here, and if I jump over to say a page that we could put something on, like say a create page where we might select that, select our time zone. I assume that there's some way within Noda Time to grab those time zone IDs?
Yes. So the idea is it's somewhat pluggable, but you're probably fine to use just the default IANA time zone database. The IANA time zone database is sometimes called, and consistently within Noda Time, TZDB. So if you use datetimezoneproviders.tzDB, that will give you the one that's built into Noda Time. The other thing that Noda Time does allow you to do is check for new data. So I publish on nodatime.org a sort of compiled representation of all the time zone data. And if you want, you can fetch that from the Noda Time site, load it into a time zone date time zone provider, which means your app can respond dynamically to, oh, some countries change their time zone rules. Okay, I'll get it without potentially even having to restart the process. So I also publish new NuGet packages whenever that happens. So if you're fine with being With the cadence of time zone information being only as frequent as your build and push, then probably sticking with NuGet and just checking whether there's a new version every time is probably good enough.
Yeah, so if you're not doing like something that's actually dealing with international business, legal, political, etc.
It kind of depends. For
Yeah.
something server side, it's probably easiest to use the built-in one because you'll control how you push and you can do that frequently. If it's an application, a client application,
True.
where they may well not update for ages and they may be quite sensitive to it, then it's nice to have the option of using the version on nodatime.org. And we have documentation for all of this. So I think let's probably leave it at that's available for you, but we won't go into it in more detail. Otherwise, we'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this then. I'm going to just take, so I set this up here. So if I take my time zone IDs and I select them into a new object, and I'm going to call this a new select list item so that I can put these in a select list.
Yep.
And I assume that, ooh,
These are just strings.
they're just strings. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then,
Well, that works out really well then.
You index into the date time zone providers.tzdb. So date time zone providers.tzdb returns you, in fact, a TZDB date time zone provider, but you only need to know that it's an I date time zone provider. And that has the IDs property and an indexer, so you
Yep.
can just ask for any time zone by ID. Now, it's probably worth talking a little bit about these IDs because I'm fine for you to present the IDs as they are to developers, and we're not trying to do a consumer application here.
Yep.
But these really, they're somewhat convenient in that you can recognize that Europe/London probably refers to London, but the IANA, they should be really treated just as opaque IDs. Imagine they were just A, B, C, D, etc. In particular, there are people, if you live in Kiev, you may well object to the spelling of Kiev in the time zone ID. It's KIEV, which is not the most current transliteration into from Cyrillic into Latin text. But if you think of it, hey, it's just an opaque ID, it's a convenient way of referring to it, it shouldn't be shown to users, that's fine. Now, we're showing it to users, so I'm giving you that disclaimer. It's kind of, I would love to provide a better user interface oriented API around this, and the Unicode CLDR project has mappings for what they call exemplar cities, and good descriptions of time zones. But this is definitely the right starting point, and we are obviously time limited.
Yeah. No, sounds good. All
While
right.
you're doing that, I'm going to just change your code in your stream time to
Go for it.
capitalize the Z,
Okay.
because time zone is 2 words.
Funny
And
thing is,
the
I wasn't
earlier
sure when I was
everyone,
writing it.
right, exactly. So this is why I said it. And if I say it now, hopefully everyone listening will start to use time zone as 2 words in their docs and everywhere, and we can get to a more consistent world, which is good.
And I'm going to change this from an int location ID to a string time zone ID.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now, I will try to run this. I don't know if it's going to try to run the browser on your side too. Live share, and I didn't mess with the settings at all since I last used it. We'll find out. Okay, so it made this page, and if I go to /stream/create, I should have, in theory, nope, the old one still. Why do I still have my old one? Because I reset the values right there. Like an idiot, I didn't delete the old stuff. There we go.
There we go. Right.
Hey.
So as you can see, there are lots of time zones in the world. And there are ways that we could make this nicer. And probably this is creating a whole stream. So this is something you do very occasionally, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So when you
cool.
set up your stream, you would probably choose the time zone you're in, and then even if you adjust the times of your events, you don't change this again.
Right, that sounds fine. Okay.
All right, so that works reasonably well. So assuming that I have one of these, I assume there's some way of converting a time that is in that so that a time. So if I store a date time, let's say I pick a future date that I want, how am I going
Okay.
to switch it to that time zone?
Right, so this is where things get a bit interesting, and this is where now is the right time to talk about what you store,
Okay.
because people will say you should store UTC, and I'll explain why you shouldn't. So let's talk about for a single event. I would store the time zone ID and what I call the local date time, which is the type within Noda Time, which is literally the local date and time. So something like November the 12th, 2018 at 7:37 p.m. Now, those two things combine in Noda Time into a zoned date time, and they're not quite equivalent because we have corner cases of around DST changes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fine. It's unambiguous to say Europe London at 2018 12/11 1937, as in 7:37 p.m. That's unambiguous. If we were to look, and I can't remember offhand, in fact, I can probably find it. If we were to go for 2018 October the 28th at 1:30 a.m., well, that local time happened twice. It happened once while it was still in summertime, and then we fell back at 2 a.m. to 1 a.m., and then 1:30 a.m. happened again.
Yep.
So, um, this is the downside of storing a local time, and converting it into something more specific is you need to cope with ambiguous things like that and potentially skipped things. So if we were talking 2018 March the 25th 1:30 a.m., that didn't happen at all. So we do have the local date time type, which doesn't know about time zones at all. It is meant to be what's on your clock and calendar. And if you take your clock around and you take your calendar around, those don't change by themselves. And you can convert from a local date and time and a time zone, a date time zone, into a zoned date time, which does represent an instant in time in a particular time zone and in a calendar system. I'm assuming we only need to care about the Gregorian calendar system, by the way. That's a whole
Yes.
different can of worms. Um, so well, two things. Firstly, my rule of thumb is you should store what you know. So I'm assuming at some point you're going to ask the user, when is your when does your stream happen?
Yep.
And if they're saying it for a single event to start with, then you would ask them for their local date and time, and you might want to check that that isn't ambiguous. But it's possible, just possible, that it's not ambiguous now and it becomes ambiguous later. That would be unusual, but feasible. Let me explain why you don't store UTC though. Suppose someone said, "I'm going to stream in Paris in 2021 on December the 1st at 9 o'clock in the morning." Okay, so if you're storing UTC, when you do this create thing, you say, okay, when is Paris 9 o'clock in the morning, December the 1st, 2021? Oh, well, it would be on UTC +1, so that's 8 a.m. UTC. And that all sounds good. So you store that in the database, 8 a.m. Great. Then the rules change. As in, there is legislation going through the EU parliaments and things, and the exact timing is still to be determined. But it's very possible, quite likely even, that by December the 1st, 2021, Paris will be on permanent daylight time, and so will be at UTC +2.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you convert your 8 a.m. UTC back to Paris time, you end up with 10 a.m. Is that what the user said? No, it's not. So if you keep what the user said, even if you also normalize, it could be very useful to normalize to UTC as well, so that you can sort of order things, see what's coming up and see whether there are collisions. If you also store what the user said, then at any time you can apply a new set of rules and make sure that you've got accurate, fresh data. Now, it's just very, very unlikely, but just possible that the French government would say, "Do you know what? We're going to make it so that at 8:30 in the morning on December the 1st, 2021, we will skip forward an extra hour to 9:30. At which point, your 9 a.m. that was entirely valid when the user created the event becomes invalid." I don't know how you want to deal with that. And Noda Time can't decide how you're going to deal with it, but it provides you options for, do you want to, you could convert leniently, which means when you say, I want to convert from a local date and time to a zone date time, which you uniquely identifies an instant in time, you could at that point say, okay, just go leniently. And I honestly can't remember the details of what it does right now. I think if it's ambiguous, it uses the later occurrence, and if it's skipped, it adds the amount of time between the start of the amount that's skipped and the end. So like 1:20 in the morning would become 2:20 if there's a skip from 1 to 2, something like that. That obviously we cover it in much more detail in the documentation.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think for this kind of thing, we'd probably want to take the lenient approach, because it's kind of one of those, well, we sort of want it to work, and our cost if we're wrong is fairly low. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So
And you can also, if our way of doing it leniently doesn't meet your needs, you can provide your own date time zone resolver, something resolver. I can't remember the details offhand. I don't have the whole Noda Time API just in my head. But you can provide your own handlers for what if it's skipped or what if it's ambiguous, and it will only call them if it needs to, and things. We try to make it relatively easy for you to do quite custom things whilst making it easier to do simpler things. So the next thing to think about is, we've been talking about a single event, and is that what you want to do for the stream time? Is this meant to be the time of a single occurrence?
it's
like
probably going to be like
today?
a recurring thing, like Mondays at 2, Tuesdays at 2.
Right, and that becomes a whole different ballgame. So at that point, I would store, going back to those first principles, what do you store? You store what the user told you, which is a day of the week and a time of day. Now, if it then becomes we've got every 2 weeks, then that becomes trickier. If you want day of week, then for Noda Time you use ISO day of week, which is like the day of week enum in .NET, but it handles Sundays differently. I think it's that Sundays are 7 instead of 0 or something like that. I honestly can't remember the details. It's one of those things, but it follows the ISO numbering.
And also has a none.
Yes, just to follow
That's
the
0.
Yeah, so 0 isn't a valid value in ISO, but it's the normal convention to provide a none enum value. So let's assume that it's going to be weekly. So we want a day of week. We'll assume weekly for the moment, and we want a time of day. So in Noda Time, that's represented as a local time.
Okay, so we have, I'm assuming it's local, yeah, there we go, local time.
There we go, yep.
Okay.
Great.
And is that the one that you said has built in the time zone ID, or do we use this one still?
We use the time zone ID. So a local time is just a time of day. So that doesn't have a date associated with it at all. And that's where in .NET, sort of regular, you might use a time span because that's what datetime.time of day returns. But that's a bit weird. So, what does the time span of 9 hours mean? Does that mean 9 a.m. or does it mean 9 hours since midnight? Because those could be different things if you've gone over a daylight saving time.
If it's a daylight savings time shift in either direction. Yep.
So this is where I'm very much for date and time in particular. Give me more types so that I can be really clear about what I'm trying to represent. We do have the equivalent of time span is duration in Noda Time. So you can represent 9 hours, that's fine. But 9 hours and 9 o'clock in the morning are fairly different concepts, and I want to have them differently.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So so these I think do get what we are looking for. Let me remove the crappy one.
Just to explain to everyone why I'm still not on the chat, I think I must have previously had an account, but I can't remember the username, and I've asked for it to remind me by email, but I haven't received that email yet. So that's what's going on. Okay, so those are the things that we would ask a user for, and that's what we would store. And how you would store them depends on your database. I find that database documentation is really appalling when it comes to date and time things. Particularly things like, I think it's Postgres that has a date time with time zone or timestamp with time zone. But it doesn't actually mean that at all. It's not like there is a time zone in the data. It just means it applies a time zone when you create the value, which is a really bad idea.
Yes, manipulating the data that a developer put in you. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what do you want to do next?
Okay, so we have these. I guess I wonder then. So, do you have recommendations for how we would store this in a?
If it's a database that supports a time, I think there is a time SQL field type. So I would probably go with that. But you could store it as just a string if necessary. In particular, this is just going to be associated with the stream. We're not storing a sequence of events at this point where you're going to want to order them and whatever. So it probably doesn't matter too much if we're doing string parsing and not being able to ask the database for anything in particular.
So as like a simple example, if we have this, and we wanted to store this in the database, I'm assuming that you're toString on this. So if we just wanted to put this somewhere as a string, that would do one that it could parse back out again.
So text handling in Noda Time takes the attitude of there being what's called a pattern. And if we get, so we're on create.cshtml. Let me just find that page and then I can.
If you click on, it should have my name. Are you in VS Code or Visual Studio?
Visual Studio.
Up in the top right corner, you should see
there we go.
BE.
Okay.
You click on that and you'll jump right to me.
Right. So if we use local time pattern, so this is the idea of it's something that is set up with like HHMM/SS or whatever, but you only need to specify that once. However, we already have a property of extended ISO, which is it will be hours, minutes, seconds, and fractions of seconds. And we can ask that to format a local time. And then likewise, we can later ask it to var parsed equals local time pattern dot extended ISO dot parse formatted. Now that doesn't return a local time yet. That returns a parse result of local time because it might fail. You can use dot value to get the value if it succeeded, and it will throw an exception otherwise. You can check whether it did succeed or not using the success property. But this is more efficient than, it doesn't throw the exception if there's an error. It just prepares to throw it so that if there's an error later, it's sort of parse and try parse combined.
I like it. That's a good way to handle it.
Yeah. Okay, so that formatted is probably what I would store in a database if I didn't know for sure that it would do the right thing with a time value.
Yeah, so that's the if you haven't confirmed that it's handling your times the way you want it to handle them, just store it as a string because, well, that's a literal value that contains all the data that the user gave us.
Right, and in particular, we're not likely to do database queries that want to check whether anything is later than this or earlier than this because, hey, it's using a time zone as well, so it doesn't really work with that sort of relations.
Yeah.
Whereas if we later on store individual events, I would imagine we'll want to store the local time and time zone and a UTC time so that we can do a complete ordering of, oh, this stream's got these things, this stream's got those things. They don't clash for the first three, but hey, they do clash for the fourth one because their time zones are slightly different and go back at different times.
Yeah, because more than likely what we're going to do is we're going to pull out probably all the say someone wants to look at what's going on Monday. We'll pull back all
Right.
the records that are supposed to be able to display on Monday, given any other filtering criteria that we have, and then convert those to the correct time and display them. So we don't have to deal with figuring out within the database which ones to pull. It's going to be all of them.
Yeah. And if it's all of them for any Monday, then it would make sense to look at this. If it's all of them for a specific Monday, I'm imagining a different table in the database that says, particular stream events.
Yep.
With different titles and things.
Yes, I would keep those entirely separate tables because like specific events and recurring events are completely different data structures for what you actually want to keep. Because one of them is you need an exact date. If you store an exact date for something that recurs on Mondays, you got to figure out like, well, hang on, okay, the date you gave me was a Monday, right? Yeah, okay, cool.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm imagining a user interface where you've said I create things at 2:00 on Mondays, and maybe you don't always do it. So I would imagine a UI that says, here are the Mondays at 2:00 for the next 6 months, and let you just click on one to create a specific one, and then you can give it a title, and that will create an instance that stores it in the other table. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Okay, so we have that. So for now, it's just developers. So we're going to show time zone that they pick. We'll let them choose which day of the week they're going to put it on. They'll pick a time from a time picker that we can just convert into the local time.
That'll be interesting. I don't know what the time picker will give us, but let's have a look.
I don't know. Yeah, we can take a look at that. I actually don't know what a time picker will give us.
This is where I'm very glad that you're coding because I don't do user interfaces at all.
I mean, I don't do them nicely. I mean, I can make them function sometimes. So what do we want to call this object that we're going to put in here? So this will be a... I don't think that we can get away with using the actual local time object for this. Because I don't think it's going to know what that is. Maybe I can fake it with a string.
Yep. Or if it would know, if it will convert it into a time span, then I'm sure we can easily convert that. I don't know what.
Oh yeah, if it gave us a time span.
Give us.
Let's see. Type is going to be. I think we can do time, and I just want to see what it puts in here for it when we do that. Let's take a look. Let's see what ugliness it did. Nothing like Battleship Gray. Okay,
it would be consistent for it to give times either date time and just ignore the date, or for it to give a time span. Either of those would be consistent with other bits of .NET.
That looks like it will work okay.
Yep.
A little time picker. Obviously, this probably figured out based on my browser that this is the way my culture information likes to display time. I
Right.
think that's who decided how to how to set that up.
Yep.
But it looks right. So we want to give this some kind of a default, which we can look at how to wire that up. But if that works, then let's do this. Razor input for time. No, not date. HTML input type time razor.
Yeah.
Input type time.
Oh, well, let's see, because presumably you're just going to get HTML and it's whatever the value
It should
comes
just be
back
the
as
string.
that's really
So yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
So it may be that having that as a string means that's fine. We don't need to use the .NET things at all. I would hope it would be the ISO 8601 string, but let's have a look. So I suspect we can use pretty much the code that I've already got of local time pattern extended ISO.parse. So
I was hoping this would tell me what format it's in, but I don't find ISO listed on the on that site. Okay, so assuming that we get that value back, let's do this then. So a public void on post. I will need to actually make it so we can post from that page. And that should give us the local time value. And you're thinking that then we can parse that down here?
I'm hoping so. It depends. I'm hoping it really doesn't come back with something that includes PM, because that would be awful.
We might, if it does, we might be able to tell it not to. Maybe. Well, I guess we can find out.
Let's see.
Did this page have any kind of a form on it by default? Was there a tag helper that would just do this? I don't actually remember if there's
the
one.
wrong person, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, it won't. I do not remember what needs to go in there because it's been like 6 months since I've done one of these. And let's give it a default local time value just so is there an easy way? Oh, right.
So this is just a string. No, this is a string.
Yeah, which I'll... Oh, right, and then I could format. Yeah, good point.
So should we just do 1400? 14:00?
Sure. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So this will be a good test. If this comes up saying 2 p.m., then that's probably a good indication that it's going to do the right thing.
Woohoo! Did. Awesome. Okay, good. Yeah. That was a good guess. So that works. Okay, so now I want to put a submit input on here so that we can post that. Type submit.
Just thinking ahead, it's entirely possible that my extended ISO parser won't work because it requires seconds. But let's see, and then if it goes wrong, I can explain how to do custom date time things.
Okay, sounds good. Let's just pick a time like that one.
That'll do.
Oh, you know what? We didn't do anything with it. Hang on, let me just toss a breakpoint in there, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. And in fact, okay.
Yeah, it'll debug over to your end too. Sorry. See, which I think means you get to see the debugger values. So awesome.
Aha.
So if we go over here, we'll just pick that one. Did it hit it? No. Okay, so I didn't actually set up my action correctly.
Okay. While that is going, I'm just going to split out the. Oh no, I can't edit this while. Oh, it's because the debugger's still running.
Yeah, we're debugging here.
Okay.
I'll stop it because I'm changing something anyway.
Okay. Now we can see the parse results separately. Okay. I have now added a few extra bits of code so that by the time we get to the breakpoint, there should be more interesting stuff.
Sounds good. There'll be stuff to actually look at. And let's hope that that works. I put an action on the form. It should submit it now. So let me streams create and click a thing. Hey, there we go. Okay. What came back in the value? 1400. All right. Excellent.
Right. So if we step over this, it's safe to step over parse. However, if you now stepped over, it would probably go bang. So if we look into parse result, which I can expand, but I'm not sure whether you can, I can see that success is false, and parse result.value will throw unparsable value exception, and it says the value string doesn't match. Now, I don't know whether you can skip over. Can you set the next? Can I?
I can jump to it. Yeah.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay. So we won't try getting the value out of parse result because that'll throw an exception.
Yep.
But if we create a specific pattern for what we expect, which is HHMM, then this should work, and we should get the right parse result. So step over again. We don't have parse result yet. We've created the pattern, but not parsed it. Yep. And then value. Success, and it's 2 p.m.
Looks good.
Okay. And then I'm just going to move this to a read-only.
Let me stop debugging, and then we can do that.
Local time pattern. Time pattern, we'll call it. And then we can just grab that. Now you'll note that it's explicitly with the invariant culture here because we don't want to care what culture the server is using. And the options in Noda Time, we've got create with current culture or create where you've got to specify the culture. But basically, I try to avoid defaults wherever possible. So there's lots of stuff in .NET that uses the default culture just kind of randomly. Well, not randomly, but predictably, but you've got to know that it's going to do it. You've got to know that you're writing code that is sensitive to the current culture of the system. And I don't like that being so implicit. So I make it, create with invariant culture, which is often what you want, create with current culture if that's definitely what you want, or create a new specifier culture. Likewise, there is no equivalent of datetime.now in Noda Time. What there is an iClock abstraction, and there's a system clock.instance that gets you the system clock. But I treat clocks as a dependency. So if you want to write testable code that uses time, then you depend on iClock and inject system clock.instance. It's another example of not using anything that's sort of ambient information.
Yeah. So the funny thing with that is, I always run into problems when I started using Noda Time, because I always created an iClock interface and a system clock class in all my code going back like 15 years. I have been doing this. The iClock and the system clock, because if I'm ever dealing with time, I'm like, well, I can't test it in any way if I depend literally on time. And then it's funny because I'm always like, no, I meant mine, not the Noda Time one. I meant mine. Thanks, using statements.
Yeah. Well, the right thing to do is clearly to get rid of your
Yes, exactly.
interface and just migrate it over to Noda Times.
When I get the time to go refactor and remove them all from all my old stuff, John, I'll do that.
Right. Right. But I'm glad we were thinking along the same lines. Cool. So we've now got the local time, and presumably we've got the time zone ID, so we would be able to store that in a database. What I guess would be probably interesting for us to do now, if we don't want to do database things, and being conscious that we don't have very much time left, is think about what would our conversion-y bits be. So we've got we currently don't have a day of week, but we could hard code it to Monday, for example,
Sure,
for the
yeah.
moment.
Because we could easily give them a drop down or a choice list or something.
Yeah.
Pick your date that you're doing. Yeah.
Right. So let's and then if we wanted to display, so when you've created your stream, maybe it should show the next 5 times that it might happen. So I don't know what Razor has in terms of Razor Pages has in terms of dependency injection. I know there is some, but let's private read only clock, and we will for the moment use the system clock.
Yep.
So having just talked about it, let's actually do it. So we can then we can create a zoned clock, which is a clock in a time zone. And then, so normally iClock just lets you say, what's the current instant of time? It doesn't have a calendar, it doesn't have a time zone, it's just an instant in time. We need the zone first, which will be date time zone providers .ttdb, and then I'm just assuming that we've got a valid time zone ID. Obviously, you would do a bit more than that, and you can do try get zone or null. If you don't want to check whether it's in a list. But when we've got a zone, we can create a zoned clock, which is just clock.withZone or inZone, which is an extension method on the interface, because the interface just knows about get current instant.
Yep. Interfaces don't have that kind of stuff.
Yep. And so zoned clock is literally just a wrapper around a calendar system, time zone, and a clock. But then we can say today is zoned clock dot get current date. Okay, and that returns us a local date. Let's make this a little bit more. Oh, it's not giving me options to do that. Okay, so let's get the next date, which will be we can do with and then date adjusters dot next or same. So actually, let's assume that if you're creating a stream, you're not going to stream on the same day. So you can say the next day of week. So if we had next equals that. So these date adjusters, the idea is that there can be, these are effectively just returning delegates, and lots of different types, like local date time has a today with, and that can take a date adjuster or a time adjuster or a date time adjuster. So you can say, give me at 7 o'clock in the morning on a local time or a local date time, and things just work nicely. So that's what these adjusters are for. And then we can do for int I equals 0, I below 5, I plus plus. Right. So we're going to do output something, and next equals next dot plus days or plus weeks 1. Now, one thing to note in terms of the design of Noda Time is that plus weeks is equivalent to add weeks, if that exists in .NET. If we had days, it would be plus days 7. And the naming here was very deliberate, and I would really encourage people to do this. These are all structs, they're all immutable. And if I write next.plusweeks1, I hope the intention is that looks wrong. That should be obviously a bug.
Yep.
Whereas if I had datetime date equals datetime dot today. Wow, do we not have system at the moment?
Well, I don't have it included at the top. We weren't
Yeah,
using it. We're
it's
using Noda
interesting to
Time.
not need system anywhere,
Yeah.
not just for date times, but for
Yeah.
anything. But if I do add days 7, that looks okay because add is a verb. You know, that's telling it to do something. Whereas
Yep.
plus weeks is kind of clearly, you want to use the return value. So
Yep.
that's why it's this way, to encourage you to avoid thinking that it's already done.
And I actually really like that naming convention, because the problem is with like add days and things like that, we're used to, say, a list. If you add to a list,
Exactly.
it in place, modifies the list.
Yep.
It has a side effect on that object.
And I've got various things that are like in or with prefixes that suggest, hey, you ought to do something with the return value.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got this local date next, and we're going to do the next 5 weeks. Let's do next date time, and we can now just do next plus local time.
Yep.
Okay, so that's taken a local date and a local time, and the result is a local date time. Okay, sounds good. But let's make that next local date time. And then we can say, well, what does that look like when it's in a particular time zone? Because, it would be nice if we were showing what are the next 5 occurrences. Let's show the UTC offset as well, because it could change. And in fact, let's make this 52. Let's show all 52, and then hopefully we'll be able to see it changing over the year. And then we can do next local date time in zone. So we can provide in zone and say, well, here's how I want to do mapping, or just in zone leniently with the zone.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the leniently is what we think is probably the one we want, because if we happen to mess up like when in the future a stream is going to happen, where we don't yet have the data for the change that happened and that's going to happen in the future, like someone's looking way far in advance if we have that problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, they might schedule things for 1:30 in the morning, and just we need to work out what they mean, even without any time zone rule changes. But for the moment, let's ignore it. But the fact that you have to say in zone leniently is an intentional, hey, you ought to be thinking about this. You've got choices that you need to make, and we're deciding to be lazy for the moment. But it should be obvious when we come back. If someone does a code review on this later on and says, "Oh, what is it that we need to fix?" Oh, this bit that's saying leniently. Well, we want to be stricter, or whatever it is.
Yeah, if we notice a problem, we could look in here and we'd be like, "Oh, it got it wrong. Oh, we were adjusting leniently. Okay, yeah, that's why it happened." Yeah.
So I'm going to create. I'm making assumptions here, which could be entirely invalid.
Yep. No, you are correct. We can, in fact, fill in this object, and if we set this up to display on the page, after the post, it should display with these values.
Right.
So, yep, your assumption is the one that is how this should work.
Hooray! In fact, let's go back so that we've got that, so that we can see what we would like to show. We can use a pattern. How easily can we write the code in the page? So, or actually, if we just, I assume if I create a private static read only, I can use this zone pattern. So let's show the year, month, day, and then hour, minute, and then this OG is display the UTC offset. Excuse me, UTC offset with the general formatting, which, if I remember rightly, uses +1 for 1 hour difference to UTC, and +130 if it's 130. So it shows different lengths, different styles, depending on the offset. And we don't need a time zone provider because even though we have got the time zone, we're not doing anything. We're not needing to parse anything that might have time zones. And to some extent, I've chosen zone date time pattern to really represent everything we've got. We could use offset date time instead of zone date time, and we can get that from here with just to offset date time. And that isn't quite the same as a zone date time because it doesn't know what time zone it's in, just the UTC offset at that point in time. So in this particular case, it's got all the information that we'd need anyway, but I prefer not to lose that information. Okay, so if you can do the UI bit, basically if we iterate over suggested sessions and call zone date time pattern dot format with each of them, we should get what we want.
In theory. Actually, let me...
It'll be a miracle.
Yeah, right. Let's do this. Interwebs. Oh yeah, we could do that. But I don't want to do it that way.
Yeah, we want a for each, surely.
We can for each if you want.
Yeah, we should definitely for each rather than
actually binding. Yeah, let's do that.
Well, rather than the for loop that it was saying, it was the for loop that was making me go no.
Well, there's a way to do it that it doesn't even require that, as I recall. So,
okay.
But we'll do it this way because it should work.
Yep. Okay, and so zone date time pattern dot format.
Oh
no, we're
yeah. So hang on, model dot zone. Wait,
it's not a static. So does the
public?
Okay, right. I wasn't sure whether.
I'm like, why isn't it showing up? I know you put it there.
I don't know what Razor Pages do. So, but it's a static one, so it's just create page model or whatever.
Oh,
create model.
Oh, well, I guess I could just use create model. Yeah. And then we'll do it that way. Yep. So, yep, that'll work.
Yep. And just to point out, that is completely safe because these date time patterns are thread safe. Use them, create them once, use them multiple times. They are not expensive to create, but relatively expensive. I'm fairly sensitive to performance issues, so I do try to make things pretty quick. And that's one of the benefits of saying, hey, here's the pattern. I can then parse that pattern and give you good feedback if the pattern is wrong in one step, and then later apply that pattern really quickly.
So we want to format the item?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that should be it.
Okay. Let's try it and see what happens.
Yeah, so which time zone should we use? New York? Sure,
that's fine.
I prefer that over US Eastern. Sounds like one of those, it's not a real time zone.
Gosh.
Oh, yeah, so we just need... No.
Actually, you know what we could do? Hang on, I have a fix for that. That might actually be a better one. Let's just do this. Let's make this an empty collection by default.
Oh, sure.
And then when we for each over it, we don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Visual Studio's just crashed for me, so I'm sure it will recover.
Oh. Of course it did, because that's what it does when we do weird stuff.
Although whether it will then allow me to get back to... Let's see.
Okay, so which one were you suggesting we try?
America/new_York.
How do we put that in other? So America slash
America.
Here we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yep. Okay.
And let me change this time just so we
absolutely
see something different. So we'll say
4,
and you know what? Let's go weird.
404.
Wow. See if it breaks. Okay, we still broke. Value cannot be null.
So parameter ID. So time zone ID, you're not binding that properly somewhere, I would guess.
So it would seem. I thought we tested that one, but
I don't think we did.
Okay, so we might not have checked that. So time zone ID, that is bound to ASP time zone ID? Should be.
That ASP items, was that model dot? Oh yeah, okay. Oh, time zone IDs, yeah.
Yeah, that should have bound that in. I'm confused why that did not connect there. Well, we did something silly when wiring up the form. So let's fake that then, because I can easily make the ASP part work again.
Right.
So
yeah, if I just put America /new _ York there, yep. Okay.
We'll just hard code that one in and not worry about it. And then when I refresh this and send the data again, it should send it with those values. And there it goes.
Right. And there we go. You can see in March the 4th would be UTC -5, and then March the 11th. So scroll up a bit, because it's going from now. So March the 11th is then UTC -4, because presumably on the what I guess 9th, because we're going on the 10th of March, that's when the time zone changes. I'm just going to validate that, because
yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right.
not believe that it works.
Yeah, between the 9th and the 10th. So technically, I think it changes on the Sunday in the morning.
Yeah.
So it'd be the 10th.
It's got the 2019. Yes, 10th at 7 o'clock UTC, which is
2 a.m.
2 a.m. local time becomes 3 a.m. local time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it has done the right thing, and there we go. So that's shown you converting from the local date and time to a particular time zone. Now you could then convert that to an instant, or get the instant out, or convert it into UTC as a zone date time, so that if you wanted to store both the golden data and an optimized version that you can do database operations with. So if someone wants to see what's on the schedule in this 24-hour period, then the local date and time doesn't really help much with that. You really want to store the instant in time as well. And then if you know that the rules have changed, you can just go over your whole database and recalculate, and remember that, okay, now I'm using 2018J or whatever it is as my time zone data. So one thing I didn't show you here is var version equals this has a version ID, so you can tell what version of the time zone data you're using. So you might store that in each row as well, and then when you get a new time zone rule, you can run across the data and say, well, for anything where the version ID doesn't match the version ID I've got in my hand, redo the computation and store the new result and the new version, and then you don't need to remember whether or not you've done it, because the information's all there.
So you're thinking then that it's probably a good idea to store it as like what the UTC version is from their time zone at that moment in addition. Yeah, okay.
So store for each session, just so that it's there for you for next time or whatever. Local date time. Time zone, unless it's always the same. So I would imagine that it's entirely feasible that a user might say, well, I'm broadcasting at NDC London. I'm normally in New York, but I'm in NDC London, so I'll schedule one for in London. And if London changes its time zone rules between now and then, I want to take account of that. So yeah, I would store the time zone. The UTC instant computed, and the time zone data version used to compute the UTC instant. And then you can, when you see that there's a new version available, you can just run a batch job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I was figuring that we'd probably see the time zone you mentioned. I figured we'd probably have that both on the event and for the streamer, of like, this is their defaults, and then that just goes in for everything unless they need to change one.
Exactly.
Because we do have a lot of people that will travel to a conference and then stream while they're
Stream from
there.
the
And
exactly.
it's also probably easier for them if they put in like, well, I'm going to stream at this time in that time zone, and then you don't have to worry about the conversion, or maybe I
Exactly.
messed it up. It's like, nope, what's the time zone in the place you're going?
Right.
Then
Right.
we just have to make it so they don't pick out of the time zone database list that you talked about, which I
Yeah.
have a solution for that, I think, which might be doing a search box and calling like the Google like Cloud API, because I think that can get us back these records, which we could then compare to. We could store one of these values based on that.
So there, I believe there's one of the Google APIs is useful for this. There's also Matt Johnson, who's an awesome guy who works for Microsoft, and works on Noda Time as well sometimes. Has a bunch of extra small projects. One of which is a geolocation thing. So you pick your actual location, possibly on a map, and it will say, "Hey, this is the IANA time zone ID that is used for that location." Because there are rules, there are shapes that basically break the world into these are the time zones for any location.
Any idea what his is called? Is he timezonedb.com?
Try searching. No, if
Okay.
you go back and add nougat on there. Oh, let me have a quick look.
Yeah, maybe you can find it, because that would be a cool one. Because actually, I think that's another one of those ones that I think is useful for a lot of people. Is like find
Right.
like where's the time zone for this user based on where they are.
Okay, so in fact, well done, Matt. He's got two packages, one called time zone names and one called geo time zone. So both of those are probably useful for you.
So it's this one, and
And
he is this
geotime zone,
user.
yeah. And
So time
you
zone
can tell
converter,
that he's
names, and geotime.
yeah. So time zone converter is between Windows time zone IDs and Diana ones, but time zone names is the interestingly localized ones, which I assume uses CLDR. So yeah, you can either populate a drop-down list using that time zone names, or you can provide a map and say where are you, and click on there, and then use geo time zone to work out from that where you're doing things.
I like it. I think either one would actually be a good solution for that. That's useful. So this then is just a package that you update as the data changes instead of calling out to some API. So that is actually even more convenient, because then you wouldn't have to hit the web for it.
Right. I was just seeing in chat there's discussion about what I'm doing at Google, and I work on C# at Google on the Google Cloud Client Libraries. Just I mentioned it right at the start, but obviously people join later on. So yeah, I used to work in Java at Google, but I'm now happily working in C#.
I'm happy for you. I do remember back in the day when you were a Java dev that everyone knew loved C#.
Right.
So
I used to start all my C# talks saying I'm just a C# amateur. I'm not like all you C# professionals in the audience, which was always good for a little laugh.
yes, exactly. I'm sure everybody was like, "Oh yeah, John must not know anything about C# then." Clearly, he did not literally write a book on it. So okay, awesome. Is there any other suggestions or recommendations you want to make for this stuff, or is that?
I guess the main. So I've already said some of the important things, like think about things and use Noda Time, precisely for the reasons of it helping you to think about things. My main thing is, even though I've given lots of corner cases and warnings, and it's all kind of crazy, it's worth not being too scared of this. It is really feasible. I think a lot of developers hear time zones and just run and hide, and then write code that they know they haven't really thought about and is probably broken, but they're so scared that it's a really, really, really hard problem that they then decide to just leave it as probably broken. You can manage. You genuinely can do it. Um, it's not that hard. Now, obviously, I've been working on Noda Time for nearly 10 years now, so I'm deeply into the whole thing, but it's not infeasible. It gets a lot harder when you do want to do things like, we've set ourselves up here to handle time zone data changes. We'll manage that. We haven't done the code that checks the Noda Time website for has there been a new version of the time zone data and things, but it is all doable. That's more in depth. Even the fact that we have taken into account that time zone data can change. This application, assuming we do store this is probably ahead of 90% of code that's out there that's dealing with future dates and times.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think that's a nice approach, and I think you gave us a lot of good warnings. And I will say in your comments about like it's not as hard as some of us make it out to be. I would point out that's because someone went through the trouble of making a system that handles this, John.
Right.
So like a lot of the complexities with like if we actually individually had to deal with the time zones changing and shifting and stuff like that, it wasn't centralized in this. It would be a non-starter for all of us. It would never happen.
And one of the reasons that I started all of this was I started Noda Time because I've been working on Calendar Sync in Google in Java and started appreciating Joda Time and thought it's a real shame that there isn't an equivalent on .NET. I ought to do something about that myself, because .NET, where the Java old date and time API is truly dreadful. No one can possibly enjoy using it. It is just awful. Whereas date and time in .NET is deceptively simple. Oh, it's all easy. You just create a new date time with the year, month, day. It's all, don't worry about it. It's fine. And it's really not. The devil's in the details. And because it looks okay, people don't worry about it, which is why, well, a reason I think why Joda Time was massively popular and Noda Time, it's not exactly unknown, but it's not. It's no JSON.NET.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully things like this this Twitch stream will help change that a little bit. But yeah, what I would really love is for Microsoft to do a new date and time API, just like Java did. So Java.time is a new date and time API, sort of based on Joda Time. And if Microsoft did the same thing in .NET, so that I could never touch Noda Time at all again, a bit of me would be sad because I have learnt so much, not just about date and time, but also about client libraries and APIs and versioning and API design. Like I've used Noda Time as this test bed where I don't have deadlines, so I can really take the time to hopefully get things right. Apart from when I make little typos and stuff, and then ship those in GA versions. But leaving that aside, I can really take the time to do the right thing. So it's been great for that. But if Microsoft put it into .NET, that would make me very happy.
I think it would be great for code everywhere.
Right.
Because it's one of those things that, like, if it, whatever the standard is, and we're always telling Microsoft that, whatever the easiest path is that you make for people to do stuff, 90% of people are going to do it. And, like, even us included, when we know, like, oh yeah, there's a danger with this thing, it's like, well, it was easy to just do that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And this is why classes should be sealed by default. But that's a whole different controversial discussion.
Yes. Yep, that is a much more significant discussion. We won't even dive into that one because we'll be here forever. So I'll leave that there because I know that you didn't want to stick around here forever. So I will probably continue streaming, but I want to make sure that I take a moment. Are you ready for an outro then?
Yeah, whatever. I don't
Sounds
know
good.
What happens on an outro for a streaming thing.
Basically, all I was going to do is say everyone should make sure you thank John for coming in and talking to us. He was awesome. Provided a lot of really great info. I think everybody probably liked that. If you're not using Noda Time, you should check out Noda Time. try using it in your system. I can post a link to that in the chat. It's pretty easy to use. You saw us at the beginning of the stream set up Noda Time. I literally just included a NuGet package. That was like the only step, and boom, we have Noda Time, and we can use this in place of the standard date time stuff. So if you're using NuGet, you've already got access to it. It's easy. It'll just pull right in the same way you grab any other package. Some of the other cool stuff I want to mention, at the beginning we actually talked about Jon's book on C#, that apparently has a new version coming out, so I will be the awesome guy and tell everybody, hey, yeah, you should read his book, it's really good.
Thank you.
Also, link down below to his current version, obviously not a link to his new version, I don't know when that goes on sale, but C# in Depth is one of those books that I always tell all the people that are really wanting to learn C# really, really well, go check that one out because it's full of good information.
Thank you.
Mobabo,
just to answer the chat, the name of the new book is also C# in Depth. It's just the 4th edition.
Yep. So just new edition of the book, which means covering new stuff. And you said you did a rewrite of it.
Yep. Yep. It's all hopefully more useful than before, and I think everyone, including wherever you get it from, certainly if you get it straight from Manning, if you get the 4th edition, you get a copy of the 3rd edition free in ebook form. The idea being I can then compress down C# 2 to 4, and if there's something that I describe briefly there that you want to know more about, you can just look in the 3rd edition that has more details.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, especially since the 3rd edition has been out for quite a while now. So
yeah,
there are probably
so
copies floating around everywhere. If you didn't want to grab a new one.
Right. Well, as I say, you get the ebook free, but yeah, you might want hard copy.
Some people like the hard copy. On tech books, I like to highlight. I like to make notes on things, and the physical books are nice for that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, well,
I like to write corrections.
Yeah, and I also wanted to thank you, Jon, for taking the time to be able to hop in here, and I'm thrilled that we managed to schedule it in December. I was like, oh, we're into December. I'm not sure this is going to happen, but I was impressed. So awesome.
Excellent. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, that sounds great. I will see you around, and thanks, Jon. Say thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, give me 1 second while I adjust the UI with. Oh no, I hid my backup of Jon. So just in case, whenever I have a pair programmer with me, in case connections or something goes wrong, I actually always keep a static image behind them. That was my Jon Skeet image. In case he disappeared for whatever reason, I had Cartoon Jon back there, but. Yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed having that awesome discussion of time zones. I thought it was really, really good. And we are going to continue because we still have a little bit more time left in the stream today. So I don't want to cut you guys short just because we did a guest stream today. So let's do some more coding together. Let me remove the last couple of things from the pairing. Turn that on. There we go. Excellent. Okay, and we need background music. Background music for coding. Always makes things easier. Excellent. All right, so hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Let me click a couple of buttons. Sorry about that, everyone. Do I have these? Yeah, Ancient Coder, this is going to be on GitHub. I tried to send a link, but give me 1 second. Gotta kill that, and I will get that link in the chat in a sec. So this code that we've got right here that we worked on the stream today, I will go ahead and commit that now. So actually, can I add Jon this way? See Jon Skeet on there? Jon, what's your GitHub? See Jon Skeet? So I don't know if all of you know this, but you can actually, he's J Skeet. There you go. You can actually now in GitHub define that there was a second person that worked on the code with you. So if you had a pair programmer that you did something with, so Renee, to answer your question, we talked a little bit about testing with that, only in that we talked about how you would use an iClock and the system clock dependency to do dependency injection of the required piece. This is some Noda Time. This isn't, we didn't really, it's like a spike. So we'll call this a Noda Time spike. And I'm going to put this in a branch for now. So Noda Time spike. So if anyone wants to check out that code, that is where I'm putting it, is over on the Noda Time spike. So as I said, you can find that over on our GitHub. And that is github.com/devchatter, and I will get a link to that in the chat here in a moment, as soon as my bot gets going again. So link to the GitHub in the chat over there, github.com/devchatter. You can find those links down below as well. If you are someone that is new here, make sure you click the follow button so you get notified when our streams go live in the future. Also, check out our Discord. It is a chat application where you can chat with me and other DevChatter viewers about all kinds of interesting stuff. You can also find our recordings of our episodes, so if you did miss the beginning of this and you want to see that, after the episode's over, you can go ahead and check out the videos section. It will automatically be there, the recording is automated, so it will be there immediately and you could start watching it right away. And if you want to see any of our old episodes, those are over on YouTube. As I said, make sure you guys follow Jon Skeet on Twitter. He's a really smart guy. He's pretty awesome, and also be sure to check out Noda Time because it's good stuff. Mattis, thank you. I appreciate the comment. So let's go ahead and take a look at some things. So we want to build something with this. So he had a couple of suggestions for things that we want to store with each one of these. So I'm going to hop over to stream time and take a look at that. So the suggestion, local date time. So that's what we've got. So that's the local, oh, these are for each session. Yeah, so let's make a second class. So let's call this a session, stream session. Not huge on the name, but I'm worried session might not be specific enough. Thanks for that follow, Mattis. And that reminds me, when I have a guest on the stream, you all probably notice that I mute all the alerts and everything like that, so that they're not like going over what people can say. Okay, so for a session, we want to have a couple of things. We want to have a local date time, so let's say local date time for now. So that's when it's going to happen according to the person, when they said. The next thing we want to have is the time zone, so that is a string time zone ID. We want the UTC instant. Is that a, let's check NodaTime dot, is it called an instant? Yeah, there we go. So it is called an instant. So we will store that. And time zoned date version used to compute. So that is a property that is a string, I believe is the time zone data version, which is a huge name for that. But let me just confirm that that's what it is, because I do remember seeing that. Version ID right there. So date time zone providers dot that and then version ID is a string. So, okay, so we will do that. So that's the version number. Okay, great. Yeah, exactly, Katrina. So that's actually one of the reasons why I'm really glad that we could point this out and we could have Jon on to actually explain it, because I have used Noda Time in some of our other code before. So anyone that's noticed the schedule command that we have in our bot, so if you want to do, say, schedule, and you say London, for example, our bot will actually figure out what London, it'll take a guess on what you mean when you say London. It guesses you mean London, England, and it comes back with a GMT time automatically and converts our stuff into that. So that is, of course, using Noda Time, and that is actually in a different application that we're doing that. So, and Malachi, yes, you are correct. Renaming classes is huge in terms of the reusability of that refactoring. Okay, so we have, I'm actually just going to say version ID. Maybe time zone data version, is it TZD? Is that what it's called? TZDB. TZDB version ID. We'll do that. We know what that is. We have a local time, we have an instant, time zone ID, local date time. Looks good. So let's do this. Move that to its own file, and we can get rid of these. So these are our computed versions of the stream time. And let me end my collaboration session since Jon's not in here anymore as far as I know. There we go. And this, a stream needs a time zone as well. So time zone ID. There we go. Perfect. Okay, I think that's the cleanup that we needed after that stream so that we can store these the way that we want. So we have time zone ID. There's our stream session, which is an instance. That's our stream time, and that is totally irrelevant right there. So I will discard that change. That is technically cleanup. We'll just put that in with the same commit. And then this one is, Jon Skeet did not partially author this part. So this is instance of stream time. Okay. Great, there we go. And yeah, so if you do put in the schedule, it is just going to guess. So if it doesn't know what you meant, specimen, then it is going to just put that in there. So so specimen did something cool over there in the chat. I don't know if you guys noticed, but specimen tried to do ACST. Oh, specimen, so it is possible that we don't have it perfect. As I pointed out even when talking with Jon, depending on what that cost is, on some of those we might have been lenient with some things, so I don't know exactly what that shift is, but if we messed up a time, sorry about that, specimen. But the reason why we didn't accept a time zone, and you know, like by letters, first off is because those are not unique values. So as much as I like, you know, just saying I'm in, you know, like my time I listed was in EST, for example, or EDT, a lot of times I will write it that way. Those time zone, like those acronyms that we use are not unique. So you can't determine which one it's supposed to be based on that. Oh, yeah, you did one of those ones. Yeah, so in our code, we didn't handle that right yet, specimen. So that is actually why you're running into that problem. Yep, you picked one of the weird ones, and we don't have those right yet. So the simple code we put in that, we just sort of made that work. So, okay. There we go. So I will figure out the web stuff later for why that didn't wire up correctly, but our little sample, I think, did work nicely. So if anyone missed what we did here, we spit out all these time zones and just sort of printed them like this. So if I... Oh, right, I have to... Site's not running. Okay. So we grabbed that. So on post, we will do that. All right. So I want to work on a couple of things today. So while we have everybody here, sure, I'm going to change directions a little bit, and I think you'll all forgive me for that one. I think we made some pretty good progress on that, and I want to jump over to some code that we were working on before that I thought was pretty fun. So I was working on a little bit of code with Guy Royce last week, and I think that'll be fun to do on the stream. Janiscu, no, everyone's the winner of Noda Time. Everyone can get a free copy of Noda Time by going online and downloading it. So I'm going to do .NET run watch. And we're going to go ahead and get this code going. And I will work on that dev stream stuff in a future stream. Okay, so our application's running. Here's what we're going to work on right now. Let me pull this out of the way. And that's not the one. That's not the one either. There we go. Browser windows. Localhost 5000. There we go. I do not need HTTPS for this. So, a while back, we were trying to do some interesting stuff with Vanilla.js. Part of the reason why I like doing Vanilla.js on the stream, yeah, I love the dark theme too. So part of the reason why we do Vanilla.js here on the stream is because a lot of people don't realize how much you can actually do with vanilla JavaScript. ES6 is actually fairly powerful. You can do a lot of interesting things with it. And every time I do it, a lot of people go, hey, why aren't you using TypeScript? Why aren't you using TypeScript? And to be honest, that is actually one more reason why I like using vanilla. So I am going to use TypeScript on some of these future streams, but I want to point out to people that you don't have to be using TypeScript. You don't have to be using all these advanced libraries to accomplish a lot of stuff. That's not to say that there's not value in using them, because you can, and we intend to. And we use a lot of libraries for a lot of stuff that we do here on the stream. But I want people to realize that languages, JavaScript, C#, they're all getting all these improvements, and they're making them really nice. So in this simple one, we have a basic little game of Tetris that is not currently really like playing, because all it does is, you know, let you manipulate these down. It does not, for example, just automatically drop the piece, so I can carefully adjust for wherever I want. Actually, let me do that. And when I drop the last piece, boom, it resets. So, there we go. And yeah, Malachi, JavaScript doesn't really do types per se yet. So I refreshed that page. Let's take a look at some of this code. So what we've got right now is the application starts up, calls a couple of things. We had an event listener to listen for these key down events. And Janiscu, no, we don't need Noda Time for Tetris. And TypeScript is cool. I agree. We're gonna do some on the stream, and I'm actually working on arranging for us to do some F# on the stream as well. So should be fun. So that grabs our rows that we've cleared. Let's get an automated piece dropping going. I want automated dropping of that piece outside of our control. So the question is, how frequently do we want to do this? What's your thoughts about object-oriented and functional programming in JS? So Metis, what I would say about object-oriented programming and functional programming in JavaScript is I think there is reason to do both, as I think there is value in both object-oriented programming as well as functional programming. And I think that that falls in line with the same idea as picking your programming language. You want to choose one that is appropriate for the problem you're trying to solve. So I think there are cases to be made for using both. In fact, I have seen plenty of applications that use F# libraries and C# libraries in the same project. Same project, not meaning like a CS project, obviously. So, like a company's, system. That's the word I'm going for. Okay, so when we play the game, it starts up, we have update. So when we update, we draw the piece, and we call update again. This needs to get extracted out, so it's actually saved. So we don't use it like that. I believe, where else did I do this? I did that up there. So let's do this. So I'm going to say this dot underscore update handler equals this dot underscore update dot bind this. So then down in this, instead of requesting that, I think I can get away with doing this instead. Stop update handler. I think I can tell it to animate with that instead. And then update should work. Let me confirm that that does what I think it's going to do. Yep, it does. Excellent. So that is much improved. So to explain what I just did, because that was a little bit weird what I just changed there. Yeah, Malachi, you're right. A lot of times the developer doesn't have the choice of what programming language, tools, etc. they use. It is up to the team to decide, or sometimes the company and the development team itself doesn't even get to choose. Okay, so what I just did is previously, and actually let me pull this up so we can show you that code. Here's the change. I know it's kind of small in this window, but basically, previously our animation loop was creating an anonymous function at runtime. So it's doing this little fat arrow style function that it creates, and it's doing a this.update right here each and every time. So it was having to recreate one of these with every loop. So instead what I did was I created this reusable function that calls that one, and it's bound to it. So we can do this as the call when we request a new animation frame. So this stores up the method of calling update. So that's the idea of what I changed here. Makes it a little bit better performance to do it this way. It just takes the forethought of wiring this up. In fact, if you go check the episode when we originally wrote it, I said, hey, yeah, I will go extract that later at some point. So this is me keeping my word and actually going back and fixing that. So this is moving the update call to a handler, removing anonymous function. There we go. Did we document get element by ID? I think we said we were. Yeah, we did one of these. I forgot that was in there. That was funny. Yeah, because the thought was, yeah, let's do like totally classic vanilla. So that was why that was how that one got in there. If you watch the episode, I'm guessing, is that Maysinger or Meisinger? Which it's hard for me to tell because I don't know if that's one or two words. The last sentence before the overload section. Regarding our discussion yesterday, I did find the page that talks about lambdas versus function. Lambdas are per instance, function is per class. Oh, yes, I remember that discussion from yesterday, Will. Awesome, I'm glad you looked that up, and I do see that you put that link in there. Let me make a note to tell the bot to let Will... actually, let me just do this. Hang on. There you go, Will. I think it'll leave you alone now. And, there we go. All right, so, Will, I think you can probably get away with posting links in chat now, but I'm not 100% on that. So we'll find out. Okay. Dunk. Yep, there you go, Will. You are able to post links now. Okay, so there we go. I actually went back and did the thing I said I was going to do. So we got that. The next thing I want to do is find some way of storing the value that we want. So how frequently is update called, I wonder? That is a good question. Let's see if we can print that out. Start app starting. Let's call it this dot underscore turn counter. Maybe update counter. So I'm going to do that. And then every time we call update, we'll do that. But actually, why don't we reset its value? Why don't we say it is this dot underscore update counter plus plus and then I don't remember the order of this operation. So we'll do that and then say mod, I don't know, 120. No, we'll just do it this way. This underscore update counter plus plus, and I will just say if this dot underscore update counter is greater than or equal to 120, then we'll say console.log 120. And I will do, and this is just because I don't know how fast this is supposed to get called. So I would just do a modulus, but I want to see that, and I don't want to trigger that off the modulus. So let's take a look and see how fast that gets called. So looking at the debugger, so we've hit 120. So it's not super consistent. So it looks like it's maybe doing like 30 or so a second, 30, 40 a second, something like that. So let's ask the interwebs. Frequency. How fast is that supposed to go? Request animate. So we call animate. Start animating, animate, and then we call request animation frame on animate at the end of it. And then if the elapsed time is greater than the interval, then reducing it back. Oh, okay. Cool. Good job, someone on the internet. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. So let's do 30 then, for now. Yeah, that appears to be writing at about the pace we expect. So roughly speaking, that's how frequently that gets called. So where did I do that? This animation loop equals that. Right, that's so that we can cancel the animation loop. Then we start that, and we start our update counter. We set the update counter to 0 here. And what we can do instead of doing this is trigger a drop, right? And I kind of want to do this after we've set the piece. So if the piece is greater than that, reset it back down and run this. So instead of calling 30, instead of printing that out, we can reset the value, and I want to trigger a drop. So this dot piece move down. Yeah, Malachi, we are calling it recursively. The call to request animation frame should be done before. You mean you'd do that instead of canceling the animation frame right here? We can change that if everybody really wants me to. That's not a terrible problem. It's not a big deal. It's a little difference. Malachi, have a good one. You have it as the last call in the loop right now. Yeah, the thought being to call it again, but you're thinking put that as the first thing in the loop? I didn't know it was supposed to be called at the beginning, to be honest. Is that... Oh, I'm sorry, the music's not playing. Sorry. That's my bad. I've had this music playing the whole time, Twitchloff, and I was the only one that can hear it. So music's back. Sorry about that, everyone. Light background music is available here on the stream. Hopefully you all enjoy the light background. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I will put it at the top of the loop, and we'll cancel it as needed then. Okay, so I assume they want you to put that up there in case your code takes too long. It definitely triggers the next one when it's supposed to. So I'm going to call this move down on here. And let's see what happens when we do that. Did I kill the web page? I might have killed the web page. Hang on. We're going to go back to it. Localhost 5000. Tetris. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. Oh, the piece. It's moving on its own. I'm not touching the keyboard. Does it hit the bottom? So, man, playing Tetris with just red blocks, it works reasonably well. And because everybody brought it up before, I just want to prove that this block can hit that lower spot and I can still move it. So it moves of its own accord, and look, I can slide a little bit, and then it lets go. Okay, so it definitely works. Turn the volume down a bit. Okay, will do. There we go, volume is down. Sorry about that. Yes, it makes sense, Will, because you want to make sure that the next one's happening, is scheduled to happen so that your thread taking too long does not prevent the next one from being in there and ready to go. Yes, Mattis, all the source code that we do here on the stream is open source, including this one. So feel free to take a look. Oh, and Twitchloff is on the ball. Thank you, Twitchloff. Very good, very good. And if anyone is planning on taking a look at the code and you want to discuss with me or anyone else, or make any suggestions, maybe you want to send us a pull request, best place to go to talk to us about that is to head over to our Discord, as that is a good spot to chat with me and the other members of DevChatter about any code that you want to make changes to. We are open to pull requests on any of the projects we do here on the stream, so feel free to take a look and make any suggestions you want. And welcome, John. Thanks for that follow. And I do want to make sure I thank everybody else who is new here and followed the stream previously. It is always appreciated, so thank you for hanging out and thank you for watching today. Okay, so that ought to work. So this is auto-dropping pieces, is this change. So auto-dropping pieces. And piece is what we call the little grouped thing. A piece is made up of blocks, is what we called those. So our blocks are literally just a color and a location that we draw in. So that is all a block is. It's nice and simple. You'll notice the block doesn't really know anything about drawing except what color it's supposed to be. The actual drawing of blocks is all handled by our screen display code. So this actually does the drawing onto the screen for all of those, and has to deal with things like the size that they are and where it positions based on those XY coordinates. Okay, so when we clear rows, we want to display some kind of a score, so I'm thinking that we might be able to get away with just some HTML stuff on here. I don't know, what do we want to display it as? Well, I'm just going to write the word something for now. And we want to label a thing. Do we want to display a thing? Do we want to give you a name? Do we want to give you a field to fill out? We could... I'm not sure what we want to do here. We could just say, like... What's that look like? I forget what else we had on here. Tetris. That didn't display at all. Oh, something, score 0. Okay. So we need this to be shown differently. And I want to look at some of our other code, because we're doing some things that are weird. So first off, I'm going to get rid of our stupid little console stuff. So there we go. No more console logging on anything. And I want to figure out what we're doing on here too, because points. There we go. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Points. So maybe points and like maybe rows. Maybe this is the information section, points, rows, pieces. Line piece drought. So in Tetris, it is very common to keep track of the drought in your line pieces. Line pieces, for at least that's usually what I call them. I'm sure that there is a technical term for what those are called, but that's like the 4 in a row, the 1x4. And the reason why is that you get the most points in that game for clearing out more rows at a time. So 4 rows at a time is the most you could clear at once. And so knowing how long it has been since you've had a line piece is useful information. So localhost 5000 Tetris. Information, points, rows, pieces. Okay, good. So no formatting, but we don't care about that. The idea is that we have some kind of information down there. Excellent. I just finished up writing a Dr. Mario clone, so this is cool to see you building up. Walnut, awesome. That is really cool. What did you build it in? What's it what's it written in? What platform, language, etc.? Not sure why all this stuff is like this. We just kind of slapped this together when we were doing it on stream. We were like, yeah, let's just hack this thing up. And it worked well enough. Add info to the screen. Add, I should say, info placeholder. Info placeholder to the screen. Remove console logs. Let me find the other ones. Console log. Oh yeah, yeah, totally rotate. All right, I'm leaving that one in there because we don't actually rotate the pieces just yet. So, so I'm gonna remove those. Okay, for piece, React Native. Oh, cool. Very, very cool, Walnut. I wish I had the knowledge to code. I have the imagination, but no skills. How did you learn to code? Keeping the balance. So I learned to code over 20 years ago, so I've been programming for a long time. You can easily gain the knowledge to code. Anyone that wants to can code if they want. So you could definitely develop the skill. Something I will mention, I do a series here on the stream called Learn to Code in C#. We've done a few episodes. I'm not sure when our next one will be scheduled for, but if you click the link in the chat, you can actually find out information about our Learn to Code series. You can also find it in the events section here on the stream, so feel free to check it out there, but you can actually get reminders of these so that when I add new episodes, our last episode was December 6th, so that was just last week. You can also watch videos of these. Oh, that one is no longer up here, but this one should be. So you can check out our Learn to Code in C# series if you want to follow along with those. We will be doing our episode 3, which will be more advanced, but we try to keep them so that even if you are stepping in for the first time, you can still follow along. So if anyone in here is looking to become a developer, you want to learn about coding, that is the place to do it. Well, one of many places to do it. There are a lot of ways to learn to code, but the best suggestion I have for anyone in here that is interested in either learning more about coding or improving any part of the coding that they do is choose to do something that is interesting. Make sure that the code you're working on is something you find fun. And the reason I say that does not mean that your job has to be fun, because you know, you might just do business apps, and if that's not the thing you really enjoy, well, hey, does it pay the bills? Sure, some people, you know, like you might not get your like dream job, right? If you want to write games, cool, go try to write games. But I will say that on your side stuff, if you want to learn a new language, learn a new framework, anything like that, choose a project that interests you or has some value to you, because that'll help keep the motivation there for continuing to work on it. Okay, so I did export class piece. I think I want to extend piece with the types of pieces, or do I want to make instance objects that have these piece types in them? Because I kind of want to make different pieces. Awesome, keeping the balance. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. If you just want to make web browser-based games, there are actually a lot of ways to do that. You could do JavaScript. You can also do C# with Unity if you want to do that kind of thing. So there's a lot of really neat stuff there. Thanks, Mattis. I'm glad you've been enjoying the stream. It's nice to see some new faces. Well, I should say non-frequent faces around here, because I think you've been here before. And I do recommend people join our Discord, as it really is a great place to chat with me and the other developers here on the stream. So here's what I want to do. I just kind of want to break this out for a moment. I don't know exactly what I want this to be. Piece locations. So I haven't really thought this out just yet. I don't know if these need names or if we can just have a collection of these. And here's what I'm going to do. So, piece blocks. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take these, I'm going to put it in there, and then that is a new piece block. And I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times. So I'm not totally on board with this, but it's not the worst either. Essentially, the idea is I'm thinking that we can just make this array that has the blocks we want to create. Ooh, no. I can't do it this way. I need to make a new block that has those values. Yeah, Stoolpenner's correct. And welcome, Mokahira and Kowite. I apologize if I butcher anybody's name. I'm not always great at pronouncing names. And hello, well, hello, I Love Pie. Welcome. Why not make prototypes for each block? I guess I could. Here's what I was thinking. So I was thinking that what I would do instead is do something along this line. So say color, color, and say, which I guess maybe, here's the structure I basically think I want to keep. And then I need to know the location where it's going to appear. And we would call this block locations. Like this. Did I pull an extra? Oh, top. That is the XY coordinate. So I need to do this. So we need to say X is that. And Y is top row. Right? And that's the basic structure that we want. Thanks for those follows, by the way, everyone. Much appreciated. Looking forward to chatting with all of you in future streams. So that's kind of the structure that I'm thinking I would want for that. So then we would do, so this would be seal, and then top row +1 and top row +1. Will, that's a good idea. from whatever the starting location is. So if the base one is, we'll call this location of the piece, wherever that is. So that's 0, 0. And this would be then, it's a really cool idea. I like it. So, so these are coordinates relative to the block's starting location. So this is not exactly an X position here. This would be like, maybe XREL. Y relative. So we'll do the relative X and the relative Y. So an initial one at 0, 0, and then one at 0, 1, and then one at 1, 0, and 1, 1. Not to the block starting location, a location. What do you mean, Will? So my thought is, wherever you position this block initially, yeah. So it should be wherever you put the block is kind of my thought here. It should be dependent on where you put that block. So wherever the starting location of the block is, that's what you'd use. So you'd create blocks at these locations. So this would be the square, right? 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. No, so these aren't the actual locations that we're going to store, Will. We're going to store them in the XY coordinates. This would then just be the creation of them, and then they'd actually be at grid coordinates that would be within the block, was the idea. So when you create this, we could say block types. So we could choose a random block type. So create blocks from create blocks for type. And if I do block types 0, pass that in, and say this dot underscore create blocks for type, then I could say create blocks for type, and this would be block type. Let me catch up on chat. Hang on. Which would be current? Hang on. It seems like coding is like chess. You have to think of the future first. Somewhat keep in the balance. You do need to think about what you're going to do with stuff, and you need to keep a lot of information in mind while you're coding. So that's part of the reason why we try to keep things abstract, so we can think of a whole concept at once instead of thinking of all the individual moving parts. You've been working on an HTML5 video player with full support for the most complex subtitle format in the world. Yeah, that stuff can be a pain. And Will is correct. You do have to think about the past as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so I want to create some block objects based on these block locations and using that color. So I called it block locations, and it has XREL and YREL on them. So let's do this. Let's return blocks. Nope. So I'm going to say let blocks equal an array, which actually I'm not even going to do that. No, we're not even going to do that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to say block type dot block locations for each, and we're going to say block Nope, loc. We're gonna say new. There's a new block. Actually, I will do it that way. Let yeah, Docs. Hey, welcome, Docs. Haven't seen you in a while. We're doing JavaScript. It's gonna look a lot like C#, and yes. So as I Love Pie mentions, we are doing ECMAScript 6, so that's ES6. But everybody just calls it JavaScript, so feel free to call it JavaScript. So let's do blocks dot. Why didn't that? For some reason that didn't work there. Anyway, so we're going to create a new block for each one of these ones, and I'm going to say Zunjin, hey, greetings, and glad you like it there, Docs. So our color is going to be block type, block type dot color. So that's for each one of these. Make a new one, and we're going to say block type dot color, and then it is x, y. Hang on. I deleted the code I needed. Let me go recover that. It's right here. So that should be the initial one. So when I call this, I need to give it the initial location for those, which we're going to do there. So that's going to get us our x and our y that we're going to use to get our relative values. So this is going to be x plus loc dot xrel and y plus loc dot yrel. Not perfect, but I think that will let us fake what we're doing. Unless I goofed on something here. So let's find out. Let's give it a try, everyone. Nothing better to do in these kinds of situations than just trying it. Well, looks like it made a block. So that's kind of cool. So we didn't lose the ability to make the initial block. I don't think. Nope. Yeah. Cool. So we can do those. Excellent. So there's our square. Comma on there. Oops. And let's do a line. And what color are we making the line? Blue. So that means it's going to be 1, 2, and 3, and these are all zeros. So we don't change the x coordinate, but we do change the y coordinate, and that ought to work. Create blocks for type. Yeah, I should be. Create blocks for type right here. That's where I assign the blocks. So yeah, well, we're definitely calling it. Okay, so there's our line piece. And let's try... the L block, and let's Pascal case these for now. So L block, and then I'm going to call this one reverse L block, because I don't know what to call those. So the L block will be some really ugly color, like whatever that ends up being. And then this one will be whatever color that ends up being. I don't know what these colors are, so we'll see what those end up being. I'm not even thinking about it, trying to optimize the video player's subtitle renderers. That is, yes, I would recommend doing a lot of tests for that, especially if you need to get that text exactly right. It is a very good candidate for that. Okay, so the line piece was easy, the square is easy, the L block, so if we're going to make an L, it's going to be at 0, 0, and then we're going to go down twice, and then this one's going to be at the same lower level, and 1 over. And then on this one, the reverse L block, it is going to be the opposite direction, so let's put these at 1, 1, 1, and 0. And then this is going to be at 0, 1, 2, 2, and 2. So that should be 3 stacked right there, followed by 1 that goes to the left, and this is 3 stacked followed by 1 that goes to the right. So there we go. It's called a reverse L block. Didn't I called it a reverse L block. So apparently I got the name right. Good. Can you, yeah, well, I know I can write colors like red and blue, but they usually don't do those colors in there, do they? Is that what Tetris does? I thought their colors were all weird. And I can adjust those colors as I like eventually, too. So let me try loading the game again. Oh, I'm always grabbing 0, so I can only grab the first one. Alright, so I want to make a little function to help me out here. So in JavaScript, they have essentially math.random. And what happens when you use math.random is you get essentially, how to explain this? It's a number between 0 and 1. And so in order to get yourself an integer that is that, you multiply the 0 and 1 times your value that you want to be between. So essentially it's whatever your, you need to multiply by your range, is really what you do. Maybe negative reverse L block? What? Oh, yeah, that's funny. I was going to call them squiggly and reverse squiggly, so I'm glad that's what they call them. No, I wasn't planning on going with the original colors. I just want them to look weird, Madison. Sorry about that. The bot does prevent people from posting those. And by those, I mean links. I should probably allow links to Wikipedia, I would think. So anyway, I want to generate a number between 0 and the number of items in block types. So what I want to do is this. I want to say block types.length, and before that I want to say math.random. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I should allow that one. And then if I multiply by blocks.length, I should be able to choose a random item out of this list. Create blocks for type, and so we will call this block type. Block type equals that. And I don't know if we're going to match with the way Tetris is supposed to work, and by that I mean like the way that it usually works. But hopefully we are close enough that that someone could actually play the game a little bit. So let me go ahead and localhost 5,000 again, bring over our Tetris game, and let's see, did we totally borked everything. What did I totally bork? You guys are probably like, Brendan, you needed to type this. Oh, yep. Thanks, Will. I forgot to floor it. You are correct. See, I told you. You're like, dude, you forgot to do this. Thanks, buddies. So block type is that times that. Yeah, see, I look at the chat, it's like a whole bunch of people, hey, you forgot to chunk it! You forgot to truncate it! Oh, do I need to, you sure I can't floor it? I bet I can floor it. Prophet LTU, welcome, thanks for that follow, much appreciated. And anyone else that's in the chat, thank you for hanging out and chatting, and thanks for the, Alright, let's ask the internets. Oh, hang on, Will has a link to the MDM docs, which these are, by the way, fantastic documents, if you haven't looked at them before. They recommend flooring here on... Huh. Well, it probably, to be honest, the difference between a floor and a truncate in this scenario is not all that significant. Yeah, I was going to say, it really doesn't make a huge difference in this. They're pretty much going to do the same operation. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is going to be, but oh man, look at that. And the color! The color! Yeah, that is perfect. Wait, why'd we choose the L block again? Come on, man. We're trying to see if our randomness works here. And we're always choosing the L block. Oh, there we go. It really loves that L block. And now we're seeing the problem there. So we didn't totally write the thing right. It's not quite perfect. As I said, we're just developing it. There is no end game, so it literally just catches on the top and we're done. But don't worry about that for now. We definitely we will add in a game over screen at some point. That is not part of what we're building right now. So those all had different colors, and the colors actually didn't look terrible considering we just kind of guessed on what might not look awful. So random piece selection. Yeah, we could start the blocks above the stage and drop them onto the screen. That's part of why I did the relative positioning, is in that we could display them on, we could have them not displayed and off screen, and it really comes down to when we do this creation, where our initial location is. So yes, we can get away with that very easily. So these are the block types, which I kind of want to create some kind of a data like thing. I want to be like new file. Let's see. Game data.js maybe. Because I kind of want there to be like one place where you can just go edit this kind of stuff. So if you want your blocks to be different colors or something like that, you can do this. So export constant block types. There we go. So import block types from dot game data. .js. There we go. That should import in and work just fine now. Which actually, do I want that name then? Yeah. Well, we'll leave it that way. Block should Tetris starts them above the screen and has them drop down. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, Will. See, you heard me questioning that exact thing. Should that end up with a capital B on that? And I think it should, based on what we did for our other naming conventions. So block manager, block types, grab the block type we want, and then that should work. Localhost, and let's bring it onto the screen. Okay, so it chose a square, and there is an L block and a reverse L block. Look at this. Boom! Hey! Nice! That's good. I like it. Okay. Fantastic. So extract block types into own file. Let's see block types data into game data file. I think that's clear. So yeah, you should make the blocks gradients. What do you mean, Will? Like make the color a gradient on the block, so it's not just like that flat color square that we have. We could do some kind of a gradient over those if that's what you mean. Actually, let's not make these the full color. Let's do that. No zeros on those. So that's gonna be mostly red and blue. So we need the squiggly and reverse squiggly then. And I don't know exactly how those are supposed to go. So squiggly and reverse squiggly. And we'll make this one CCFF00. So these two then are flipped like that. And then how's a squiggly go? Just to make sure that I don't mess these up. Tetris squiggly Tetris Termino. Thank you, random thing on the internet. So where's the squiggly? See, here we go. Kink, right kink. So wait, that's a reverse squiggly? Is this that's the left, that's a left squiggly? So this one is, okay, so. Let's see, so that's a, so it's, so the first piece is at 0, 1 is where that is, and then there's a 1, 1 and a 1, 2, and then there is a 2 over at 0. Whoop, and these are at zeros. My mistake. 0, and then 1 and 1. Oops. Hang on, let me think about this. There's nothing at 0. There's nothing at 0, 0. And then, okay, so looking at this piece. So that's 0, 0. That's 0, 1. 0, 0. So then there's a piece at 0, 1. 0, 1. And then there's 1, 0 and 1, 1. So there's 1, 0 and 1, 1. And then there is 2, 0. Okay, that's right. The reverse squiggly has 0, 0. It has 1, 0 and 1, 1. 1, 0 and 1, 1. And then that one is 2, 1. 2 and 1. Okay, and then the last one we need is, I don't know what to call this. The Tetris block. Pyramid? I could call that pyramid. Maybe a T block. Maybe I'll call it a T. And it's upside down, but I'll still call it a T block. Because I like T block. That sounds good. Which we'll call T. So this needs a color. Which I don't know what the heck that's going to do, so we'll find out in a moment. So this one had nothing at 0, 0. It has a 1, 0. And then, so it has a 1, 0. So that's the only 0 there. And then everything else is at Y1, and it's at 0, whoops, 0, 1, and 2. So there we go. That should make the T. That makes everything else. T block. No, yeah, well, we could do this. If you want. The block formerly known as the T block. Exactly. Thank you for that suggestion, everyone. That was fantastic. So let's find out what happens when we try this now. Localhost. Here we go. Whoops. Clicked on the wrong thing. Alright, so there's an L block. Sorry, a line piece, an L block. I don't have any way of flipping these right now, so we're going to drop that there. So these are not the standard colors, but they... Oh, that piece is terrible when you don't actually have rotations built in, huh? And these colors aren't bad. Hey, there it is. Excellent. Hey, and there's the reverse. Okay, cool. So we've seen all of these. These are probably awful for people that are colorblind. They're probably a really bad set of pieces, but hey. We got it kind of working, and I know that these are not at all the standard colors, but hey, it seems to function a little bit. Yes, Tetris when you can't rotate the block. Oh, okay. Well, so yeah, not depends on how colorblind and which set. Yeah. Okay, so apparently the colors are weird and crazy enough that people can tell. Hey, Angel, welcome. All right, so that actually worked pretty well. So I like that. Good job, pieces there. And actually, you know what? I'm going to leave those trailing commas there. So this is finish making initial game data pieces in game data. So that's the initial set of game data. So hey, cool. Awesome. I am very happy about that. Those look pretty good. So next up on the docket for this game, there are two things that I want to tackle. So the two things I want to tackle, we should move the pieces above the screen. So actually, let me go ahead and do this, so we can actually do this right. Let's go over here, not to the bot. We're going to go over to our game jams. And let's go ahead and put up some issues, and we're going to say rotate blocks, rotate pieces, rotate piece, feature, rotate piece. Actually, let's just call it rotate piece, and we'll give it some kind of a label that makes sense for that. So this is an enhancement, and sure. So allow the user to rotate the piece when pressing up or W keys. So that'll rotate the piece. And what else do we want to do? Hang on, let me check out the chat. Thanks, because that's a great answer. Oh, Will, awesome. I will take a look at that in a second. Keeping the balance, awesome. I look forward to seeing you back next time. So our next stream, by the way, is going to be on, what day? Thursday. We're going to do a stream on Thursday and a stream on Saturday. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for hanging out. KZ, hey, welcome. It's going pretty well. Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Now we'll all fall over to one side. Will, what do you mean we'll all fall over to one side? I don't know what you mean. Canvas rendering context, create linear grid. Oh, yeah. I love it. So we could do that when we're doing the coloring. Very cool. Let's do this as a new issue. Add gradient to the block. That is not a related issue. Display a gradient on the color of the blocks. I can't type today. That was an enhancement. I will add that. And that is a great first issue for someone. Shift Alt plus and Shift Alt. Oh, Shift Alt comma and Shift Alt dot. That's what you wrote. Yeah. Oh, Pyro. He was here for about 90 minutes. He left a little while ago. So, yes, Pyro. That it was that Jon Skeet, the one that the one that is you know, of Stack Overflow fame. That is that Jon Skeet. I mean, there's a lot more to him than just that, but yes, very cool guy. Gave us a lot of information. If anyone did miss that part and you want to catch it after the stream, you can actually go back and watch that in the video section here on Twitch, as well as it'll eventually be over on YouTube, but for now, you can just find it here in the video section on Twitch. You can actually find any of our episodes. What do you mean, Pyro? You knew I had celebrities in here. You're here. Okay, so next thing. So I want to display display information. So display information screen. So display information in the information. Display information on the screen. That is an enhancement. And actually, that's also a good first issue. That's definitely something that someone could do pretty easily. The challenging one, we have... what are the fields? These. You know what? Hang on. It's going to be way easier if I do this. And do. Sure. We want to calculate and display. There we go. Ancient Coder. Yes, Jon is a brilliant developer. There are a lot of very smart developers in the world, and a lot of us really do appreciate the effort that many of them put into making the rest of our lives easier, because he tackles a huge problem in dealing with date times with Noda Time in C#. So if you haven't taken a look at it, you really should. take a look at Noda Time in C#. Can I send you a link to one of the tests I have for my video player? It's waiting on browser devs to fix the CSS blurring. Just want to show you how inefficient CSS blurs are. I love Pi. If you're over in Discord, you can send a link over in there. We have some channels where you could either post it in a channel that is about the technology stack that you're working on, or we also have a channel that's just for sharing stuff about projects that you're working on. And if you wanted to go into the rants channel, we do have a channel in our Discord that is dedicated to ranting about the annoying stuff that we have to deal with as developers. So great places, all of those, for that kind of thing. Okay, so that works well for now. We need a couple more issues on here, and those are allow game over when no room for pieces. So that is okay. We should have a game over and allow restart when there's no room for new pieces. Ranting. People thinking people think Python is a good starting language. People think Python is a fast language. People think There you go, Pyro. Yeah, you can rant about that. A lot of people have strong opinions about various languages and technologies, at which point I would say languages are good at certain things. Use languages for the things they're good at, or just use a language you like because you like it. Obviously, there is no one language that is the best language ever made. A lot of it comes down to personal preference, and I get the feeling Pyro doesn't like Python. So, okay, anyway. So we have a game over screen. So we're suggesting game over screen. We're suggesting rotating pieces, display information on the screen, and add gradient to the blocks. I think those actually sound like a good set of things as the next steps for this game, because we do have random block selection. We have the blocks slowly moving down. And a general improve overall game performance. Which really is a just go through and, you know, go through the application, improving the performance. Because why not? It could use it. We didn't really focus on that when we developed it, so we know it's going to have a whole bunch of those kinds of problems, because if you don't think about that, you end up creating them. That's just kind of how it works. There is something to be said for premature optimization, but at the same time, there is also something to be said for having ignored performance completely. Okay, so a couple of things I mentioned. I did mention to everybody that you should join our Discord. It really is a great place. There's a lot of fun people to chat with. If you are here and you are new and you want to make sure you catch our future streams, I really do recommend you hit the follow button. It is a great way to, get notifications when the stream goes live, because we do have 4 streams that I do every week. So I stream on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and if you want to find the schedule for that, you can find the information down below the stream. In the panels, there's actually there's a panel down there that will display my stream times in your time zone. It should take a guess, but you can also ask my bot to display it in your time zone, which I've done a handful of times, and on the stream today, I should say. If you want to contribute to any of our projects, you are actually welcome to send us pull requests, make suggestions in the issues like what I was just doing here. You can find all the repositories that we do for everything on the stream over at github.com/devchatter. So if you want to take a look at the code that Jon Skeet and I were working on earlier today, that is over in the Dev Streams project, and I will show you that. That is right over here, and we were working on this branch that I called the Noda Time spike, so you can find this over here. And then you can also, you could look at the bot that we use here in the channel. So we have a fairly advanced Twitch bot that we do a lot of different things with. So that's our main project on the stream. We do a lot of work on that. So if you want to see that, it's C# JavaScript and is quite fun. If you want to take a look at these at the game that we're developing, it is over here. I am currently working in my little code cleanup branch that I'm going to probably merge in today, so that that is in the master branch, and that is this little Tetris game that we're working on. So it is simple little thing. If you want to get this running, you can grab this and just run the. You can actually just run this HTML page with all these bits. I run it in a .NET Core website, but you can obviously spin it up with Node or whatever your web dev tool of choice is. So feel free to send us a pull request for any of that. If you want to see any of our videos, as I said, you can find recordings of all the videos we do here on the stream in the video section on Twitch of the most recent ones. And if you want to see the full archive of everything that is before what's recorded on Twitch, that's all over on YouTube at youtube.com/c/devchatter. In addition, if you want to follow me on Twitter, information is over there in the chat. Links are also down below. I am at Brandonius. To answer the questions that I just saw in chat, let's see, Pyro, what's the actual goal of Noda Time? So Noda Time is a, I'll just say, more intentional handling of date time than what is built into .NET by default. I would recommend that people read up on it. If you end up having to do anything with scheduling or really dealing with times much at all, especially if you deal with data that is international, it is really a much better solution to handling dates and times than what we've got by default. What we've got works well enough for a lot of scenarios, but if you really are doing things that depend on time zones, or anything like that, I really recommend you check out Noda Time. In addition, it has very nice interfaces set up, so if you're going to do unit testing based on time, you can do that as well. So if you build an application that has notifications or anything like that, I would check out Noda Time. It is a very good solution. I've used it in a lot of projects. We use it here. And as Twitchloft says, Noda Time is what date time should have been. I would say it's what date time should be fixed to be. Because obviously you can't always start off with everything perfect right off the bat. So if I just need a timestamp, aka datetime.utc, now should I still switch to Noda Time? You don't necessarily need it, Pyro. If you are just, say, doing a log of a thing that happened at a time, you can probably get away with just using a datetime UTC now. I would still recommend that you wrap that so that you can test it a little better. But for basic stuff, like if you're just logging that a thing happened at a time, you can do that if location of the event doesn't actually matter that much. So if it's just on the server that time, you can usually get away with that. It's just if you're doing a more complicated thing. Is Noda Time in the .NET Foundation? Twitchloft, I don't know on that one. I don't believe it is, but I'm not... I think Jon owns it. I don't think .NET Foundation owns it. It is available through a NuGet package. It's pretty easy and nice and simple to install. There's information. It's got pretty good documentation as well. So Noda Time, right here. So this is what it is. It is pretty easy to work with. As I said, it's just in NuGet, so nice and simple to get. Other things to mention. If you are one of the people that is interested in learning coding, I will be scheduling new Learn to Code in C# episodes coming up here soon, so that is my ongoing series. I will be scheduling some more of these. And other than that, I want to probably, hang on. Yeah, so Pyro, and Ruby, yeah, I will probably bring, I will probably be doing some Ruby on stream, and as Twitchloft knows, I will be doing some F# on stream. So, Twitchloft, my plan for that, I am going to be talking, yeah, thanks, Will, very good. That was a nice troll there. So, I have a draft email. I am actually going to reach out to the guy that Will is always yelling at me to try and schedule to bring on the stream. I'm going to see if I can convince him to come on and do some F# with us here on DevChatter. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe we will manage to convince someone that it's a fun idea to hop on the stream and code with us. If so, that's awesome. If not, we'll see. Other than that, I think that this is a great time for me to wrap the stream, and I will catch all of you next time. So again, that's going to be Thursday. We start a little early on Thursday, so check your clocks right now. Subtract 5 hours, and that's when we start on Thursday. So whenever that is, that's when we're streaming next. I might be doing a pair programming stream on that one. Not 100%. If I am, it's going to be a fun episode doing SignalR in C#. So that means we're going to be doing SignalR, I believe, for both the client and the server. Another developer asked me if I would be interested in helping him out with that, and he is another streamer. And he suggested that time, and I'm like, well, we both stream at that same time, so we might do a dual stream, which is really going to drive Will insane. But that's Will's problem, not ours. So anyway. I hope you all had fun today. As I said, if you missed any of the stream, go check the video section. You can watch it from the beginning and see everything that Jon Skeet said if you missed any of that. He had a lot of great information, and I look forward to seeing all of you on Thursday. So take care, happy coding, and enjoy the rest of your day. So later.